Welcome back to the TwinSpires Jury. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Darren Sakali to talk our best bets and fades of the week at Keeneland, Churchill Downs, and Belmont at the Big A. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you it's the final weekend to use that promo code, the Jury, all one word, to get a 15% boost on your first win wager in any of the races we're about to discuss in our best bets and fades section. And let's start things off with James today. Tell us your best bet of the weekend.
My best bet is going to be number 7 Coes in the Bowman's Mill Stakes at Keeneland. That is race number 6 on Saturday's program. It's a 6-furlong stake for 2-year-olds. And Coes is a colt. First off, he's bred for the main track through and through. His sire Outwork won the Wood Memorial. He's by a dam who recorded all of her wins on the main track. And his lone sibling to win is a dirt maiden winner in Southern California. But Coes debuted at the end of the Saratoga meet in a restricted maiden special weight for horses that sold for $50,000 or less or RNA'd at auction. It was a 5.5 furlong turf affair, and he rallied from just off the pace to win by about a length. Got bet down based on the way he had been training for Wayne Catalano before that race. As a result of that win, the Catman Catalano kept him on turf for the Indian summer at Keeneland. Took a little bit of a step backwards, was in position in upper stretch, but just had no finishing kick and wound up a non-threatening 4th that day. I think the move to dirt makes complete sense. I think Coes will make a smooth transition. And he is just trained superbly. He works like 46 and change breezing in preparation for this event. And the other thing I'll mention that really attracted me to Coes in this Bowman's Mill, he's listed at 10-1 on the morning line with Tyler Gaffleone, is just the abundance of speed entered. We have a filly in here, number 3 Royal Slipper, that showed tremendous speed from the rail in her debut at First Asking. But she's going to have to deal with Valentine Candy, number 4 Glengarry, who's runs 21 and change in his starts, and even Normandy Hero does his best running up or close to the lead. So I think there's a lot of speed in there. It's going to set up perfectly for Coes. Darren, who's your best bet of the weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to look to a horse that I think is interesting later on in the card, actually early in the card, I should say, race number 5, True Quality, who's going to be leaving from post position number 11 in this event. Just an entry-level allowance, but it's an interesting field here, and you got some runners in here that have been trying at this level for a few times, a couple of horses dropping out of stakes, including the favorite. But this race, to me, I think has got a couple of horses in it that want to go forward. The race is at 1 mile and 3/16, and True Quality has already proven over a route of ground, broke his maiden, going 1.25 miles at Belmont, came back at Kentucky Downs, and I thought ran respectably well, going 1 mile and 5/16 over that undulating course. He's never run a bad race in his life. I think he's going to get a good setup here, and I think he'll probably lay pretty close in this particular spot, sitting somewhere around mid-pack. The outside post doesn't really bother me that much because at 1 mile and 3/16, they start this race way up at the top of the home stretch. So he should have plenty of time to get situated and find a good spot. Jose Ortiz was aboard for the win, was aboard for the debut at Horseshoe Indianapolis as well. I have a ton of respect for Jonathan Thomas. I think he's one of the best trainers in the game. And when he shows up with a horse like this, I always pay attention. I think 9-2 is definitely a square enough number. So we're going to take True Quality in this tough allowance event in race number 5, Keeneland, on Saturday.
I like it. I'm going to go with number 5, a colt and the grade 2 Mother Goose, which is race 8 at Belmont at the Big A on Saturday. Now, the morning line hadn't come out when I handicapped. It's possible a colt could be the morning line favorite, but I'm hoping money comes in on number 6, Kajira, off a big win in the Seneca at Churchill on September 23rd. Kajira had a 101 Brisnet speed figure, won by more than 6 lengths, but moving back up in class, hasn't gotten a graded stakes victory yet. We also have Julia Shining, Defining Purpose, 2 horses on the Kentucky Oaks Trail last season, and then 3 Chad Brown runners, but I think a colt is the top pick. This is an Into Mischief filly. She was third by a length and a quarter. I'm sorry, 1 3/4 lengths in the Cotillion last out on a sloppy track, but 2 back she romped to a 10-length win in the Monmouth Oaks, and she got a 99 Brisnet speed figure. So I'm going with the colt here. I think she'll get a fast track on Saturday because no rain in the forecast, I don't think, in New York.
We are very excited about that.
Well, Darren, before we move on to our fades of the week, can you tell us about any promos we should look out for this weekend?
Yeah, obviously we're in a hotly contested time of year with some big stakes coming up with the Breeders' Cup, and the Churchill Downs meet gets underway as well. But want to remind you, we do have the Keeneland win bonus, which is still in effect through closing day Saturday. The more bets you win, the higher the bonus gets. So be sure to click on that and opt in if you haven't done so already. Sunday kicks off Churchill Downs. We have a $5,000 challenge on Sunday. Basically, just make some win bets throughout the card, and if you have the most winners of the day, you're going to win the $5,000. And if you have an equal number of winners with other people in the contest, you'll share in 5,000. But still, it's a $5,000 prize for just making win bets. It's a great offer, and we'll have other offers for you at Churchill Downs throughout the meet, including a hit it and split it daily as well. That's going to kick off next week. We're going to have some enhanced points offers throughout the meet, and of course, Breeders' Cup coming up next week as well. So we'll have those Breeders' Cup money back offers for you live this weekend. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. So always coming at you guys with the promos, and certainly excited for some big promos in a big time of year for racing.
We appreciate it. And Darren, we'll stick with you for your fate of the week. Who are you not going to back at a short price?
Yeah, speaking of the opening day card at Churchill, in the Street Sense, the grade 3, there's a morning line favorite here for Todd Pletcher that I'm against in Moonlight. I'm always dubious of horses that win these off the turf events in maiden company, and they win, by a large margin. You take a look, and what's left in that race is typically not the strongest of the fields. Now, somebody could point to the race and say, well, hey, the horse went over dirt and responded, and maybe this was a dirt horse all along, and that could certainly be the case. I just think this horse is going to be overbet because the horse won by 8 lengths in an off-the-turf event that certainly had a series of scratches in it. I think this is a colt that's facing a much better group than what he saw last time out, and I think it's just going to be a huge underlay here in a race that I think can have a variety of different options. So I'm going to fade Moonlight off that big win and off the turf event at the Aqueduct meet, James.
Yeah, I mean, there's no chance he gets that trip. I thought his first effort was so promising on turf. It's like he's taking a flyer, but he's going right back to the grass, I think, because I agree. I don't think he's going to beat that group. It's a really strong field. My fate of the week is going to come in race 5 at Keeneland. It is the favorite in that race. Darren talked about it earlier as far as his best bet, a different horse. I'm going to fade the favorite in there. Number 9, Clever Thought, 5-2 on the morning line. This is a colt that ran in Keeneland last spring and went off at short odds that day in an allowance race at Keeneland and never fired a step. Ran 7th, a well-beaten 7th that day. Not a very encouraging sign as far as his affinity for the course. And in 3 starts since then, he's lost all 3 of them. I thought that he was no factor, obviously, last time against stake rivals, and you might be able to give him a pass for that effort. But I thought that allowance race wasn't the strongest field. 2 back at Saratoga that he ran 2nd in. And he's been cleverly managed, whereby he's a 3-year-old colt. His connections have kept him against 3-year-olds. Now he's stepping up to face older horses for the first time in this allowance race Saturday. Darren mentioned truly quality. I expect him to run better second time versus winners as well. And even Hilliard, who was in that race and placed, I think he's in with a chance also. So I'm fading number 9, Clever Thought, in race 5 at Keeneland on Saturday, Ashley.
And I'm going to take it to race 7 at Keeneland, and I'll be taking a stand against number 2, Traeger, which is 3-1 on the morning line. This is a 7 furlong allowance optional claimer for 3-year-olds and up. And it's a 10-horse field. You'll see some names you recognize like Obesos in this field. And Traeger is returning off a 9-month layoff for Mark Glatt. He won last out by a head in a 6 furlong allowance optional claimer at Santa Anita. He's only raced on the California circuit in his career, now shipping over to Keeneland. And I feel like there's a couple of horses here that could potentially beat him. I like Obesos dropping in class, cutting back in distance. I think Pro-Oxidant, Dr. Oscar also dropping in class and have a chance here. And yeah, in the 10-horse field, if you look at Prime Power, Traeger's actually last of 10 in Prime Power rankings. So I'm going to take a stand there.
Yeah, I didn't think those are races. It's a little bit of a bold stance. It looks like to me he shipped east with Dr. Venkman, and he just kept him here after he ran last week, got him a work over the track. So he's running him in this spot, and he does have good numbers. But you're right, the competition I didn't think was much in those races.
All right. Well, James, what are you looking forward to this weekend aside from some Keeneland racing?
Well, I'm going to mention the Fayette Stakes. I thought it really came up terrific this year. You've got a 12 horse field, and the field has seven of the 12 are graded stakes winners. Now, that doesn't include the morning line favorite Trademark, who's in with a big time chance, as well as number one Film Star just ran second in the Woodward and is looking for his first graded win as well. I thought, both Film Star and Trademark are win contenders. But one thing about the race is that it drew an abundance of speed. I thought there's like plenty of pace in there to suggest that it's going to either be hot or heavily contested up front. And I think the race is really going to set up, the mile and eighth race will set up well for a late runner. I'm going to give the edge to number 9, O'Connor. He came back from a freshening, had a couple placings in graded stakes. He's been getting a huge brisnet late pace numbers. And I thought last time in the Woodward, the race flow was the race dynamics didn't play to his favor, but I think he'll get a better race flow in the Fayette. And I'll also mention number 2, Happy American, who I gave a little bit of a shot last time too, and I thought he got involved too late, but that was a little bit of a sneaky effort, and he'll be rolling late in the Fayette. Darren, what are you looking to for what else this week?
Yeah, well, I went through all the Breeders' Cup pre-entries already. It's one of my favorite times when those come out and you get to start to look at some of these horses and see the field start to take shape a little bit. And the thing that I was struck by is this is probably the strongest international contingent that I've seen in a Breeders' Cup in a long time. Europe is sending some monsters over. And I know in years past, we've talked about that, sometimes they send their second tier runners, their third tier runners, and that's good enough to win. But they're sending some top flight horses. Even in the 2-year-old turf races on Friday, there's a couple of serious horses in there. The filly and mare turf has Inspiral, Lumiere Rock, and Warm Heart in it. All of them Group 1 winners. Inspiral's a multiple Group 1 winner overseas. She's an absolute monster. That field is loaded with European talent. The Breeders' Cup Mile is another race that the Europeans have come out in major force. Kalina, who's coming in off a Group 1 at Longshop, a win there, is going to be extremely tough. Master of the Seas is still a European horse, even though he's had a couple of starts over here. Maj, who won the QE2, is a European horse. So, I mean, the mile, the filly and mare turf, and I didn't even get to the Breeders' Cup turf yet, which is also just completely loaded with international runners. Japan's got some horses as well, especially in the Breeders' Cup Classic that are going to be players. So, yeah, I was just completely struck by how much of a challenge the American contingent is going to have this year, James, because looking through some of these races and the Europeans and the international horses that are entered, I would set their over under for wins on the weekend at 5.5, and they're not even in every race. They've got some killers coming over for sure.
I might set it at 6, to be honest with you. They've won 13 overseas horses, have won 13 races the last 2 years. And the thing that really, we saw it 2 years ago, the Japanese had 2 winners. They won the mile, they won the distaff. Last year at Keeneland, I think there was only one Japanese horse that came, and it was like a long shot, didn't run any good. But you got Song On in the mile, and the reputation on that horse is just pretty lofty. And you got Usha Tesoro in the Classic. I mean, there's 2 heavy hitters. They've got about 7 or 8 other horses, I'm sure, have high class, and I got to do some work on. But to go with all the Euros that are going to be in the fields, you referenced some of them, Darren. There's, I think there's a bunch more for O'Brien and as well. So I agree with your sentiments. The international horses run great at Santa Anita. They certainly have in the past, and they look poised to have a real big year. Ashley.
All right, well, I'm going to take it over to Churchill Downs since we have the fall meet kicking off on Sunday, and we have the Grade 3 Street Sense, which Darren already talked about with Moonlight, and then the Rags to Riches for the fillies on the road to the Kentucky Oaks. And Kenny McPeak is going to be well represented in both of these races. He has 2 runners in each. He has number 1 Generous Tipper and number 3 Northern Flame in the Street Sense. I actually like Northern Flame a little bit better here at 4-1. Has Julian Leperoux aboard, and he was 10 for 33 at the September meet. September for Churchill. And then over in the Rags to Riches, we have Vivi's Dream for Kenny McPeak, 6-5 morning line favorite. Think she's probably going to be the horse to win this one. Already has 10 points on the leaderboard, and I think she'll get another 10 here this weekend as well. What do y'all think about Vivi's Stream? You give her the win?
It's
Got a shot.
interesting. Go ahead, Darren.
No, I was just gonna say, got a shot. Tough race. You do pick a lot of tough races. That's kind of what I see. But no, got a shot. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely lays over that field. I think we've talked about that street sense. I agree with both what you and Darren have said, Ashley. That's a terrific race. I'll mention a couple in there, both the 1 and the 2. Generous Tipper for McPeak off the 3rd and the Breeders' Futurity, and Gettysburg Address, a sharp first out winner by Constitution for Brad Cox. They're in with a chance in my mind, but I'm going to do some more handicapping work. The thing with VV's Dream, 20-day turnaround from the Pocahontas to the Alcibiades, and now this is a 22-day turnaround. So he's running her pretty regularly, and obviously it looks like she's looking at another 4-week turnaround if she runs well Saturday for the Goldenrod on Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I say got a shot, obviously tongue in cheek. She's going to be a handful, and they're kind of interesting that they didn't send her over to the Breeders' Cup. I mean, she ran well at Keeneland.
She ran terrific.
Yeah. So maybe just the idea that want to keep her home, don't want to ship her. A lot of big races coming up in her future, and they're okay. I know McPeak has sent a couple of horses over for the juvenile fillies in California. Princess Warrior is one that comes to mind, who ran second in the Alcibiades and didn't run well out in California. So perhaps just wants to keep her local. But yeah, I mean, look, in that field, she obviously will be a handful. Clearly a sound horse. McPeak not afraid to run her. And I think she's got a very, very bright future in a big 3-year-old season on tap.
Well, she definitely likes Churchill, broker maiden there, and then of course won the Pocahontas. So hopefully it goes 3 for 3. All right, well, that's all the time we have today for the jury. Again, use that promo code, the jury, all one word, for that 15% boost on your win wagers. And we'll be back next week for some special editions of the jury talking all things Breeders' Cup. We'll see you then.